Hello and welcome to Inside the FBI. Here at College of DuPage, we recently got a rare inside look at how the FBI operates, what agents think, and the real rules and regulations. We begin with serial killers, why they fall through the cracks of society, and how they get caught. Here's Kelsey Peacosh.
They might seem like they have it all together to their friends and family, but when the sun goes down and these very people come on out to pursue heinous crimes such as killing, rape, or arson, we always ask, what is it that really goes on in the mind of a serial criminal? Do a lot of people who commit these crimes have a mental illness? Today, we learn more about the world behind the investigation of these motives with Ross Rice.
They do analyze serial crimes, and they do try and come up with reasons why these crimes were committed, how they could have been detected earlier, how they can be prevented. Anecdotally, I would say that mental illness of some sort is always a factor in serial crimes.
While Ross Rice may not be an expert on motivations, the FBI did establish the Behavioral Analysis Unit where agents and investigators analyze crimes to figure out why they were committed and how they could have been detected earlier. Like Ross Rice said, mental illness is always a factor in serial crimes because normal people don't do that.
Not all crimes get solved, even by the FBI. But why is that? Here's Nick Kinzel.
There are many cases the FBI deals with year after year. The obvious goal is for all the cases to get solved. Well, unfortunately, not all of them do. This is what we call a cold case. There are many cold cases that are still out there in the United States, some dating back to when the FBI was founded. One of the most famous cold cases out there is the case of the Black Dahlia. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short was found naked and perfectly sliced in half at the waist back in 1947. Her killer has yet to be found. So what does the FBI do with all these unsolved cases?
There are a lot of cases that go unsolved, and the primary reason for that is the people that commit the crimes don't want to get caught. And this may seem like an obvious answer, but a lot of times people overlook that. If you're going to commit a murder or you're going to commit a robbery, you know it's against the law. And I haven't met anybody, save and except for one or two examples, where somebody wanted to get caught.
The development of technology and forensic science through the years has played a key role in helping solve these cold cases. Without it, it would be virtually impossible to solve any case, therefore increasing the number of cold cases the United States already has significantly.
Even if you're the victim, you may have some skeletons in your closet, but can these skeletons be held against you? Everyone uses their cell phones all day to text all of the people in their life, but what if everything you typed could be held against you in a crime investigation? When asked about cases involving text messages or pictures being used against the sender, FBI agent Ross Rice explained that the victim of an assault crime is always the victim.
What the victim said or did prior to or after that is irrelevant in the legal sense. Did this person commit the crime? How did they commit it? How do we know we committed it? And why did they commit it?
So for anyone out there who has experienced assault and feels like they asked for it or it's their fault, please seek help. Because as Ross Rice said, whoever committed the crime is responsible for that crime. Double agents. Whose side are they really on? Hayley De Silva has us taking a double take.
We've all seen tons of movies about tough guy double agents and undercover spies. Fan favorites like Bourne Identity, Casino Royale, and Mission Impossible, just to name a few. But how common is espionage in real life? And is the big reveal of their true identity as dramatic as it is in the movies? We asked our FBI informant, Ross Rice, for the answers.
Conversely, when we identify somebody that's working in that role, it's very common to try and what's called turn them. And now, instead of being prosecuted in the United States for espionage, they're now tasked with providing false information to their host country and or being used to gather intelligence from the host country that the United States can use. Most of the cases that take place you never hear about. If there's not a criminal case, if there's not a charge filed, it just goes unreported because there's no public record.
And there you have it. While we as a country have changed how we handle these cases, there's still some reason to believe that maybe not everyone is who they say they are. For Inside the FBI, I'm Hayley De Silva reporting.
When we come back, we'll talk about pirates, drug dealers, and the border, plus the biggest mistake a criminal can make. Forget about the Caribbean, pirates are everywhere. But what are the FBI doing to stop piracy? Here's Tom Hamill.
Over the years, I've gotten interested in the investigation of film piracy and wondering if it's still going on. Film piracy is when a film is produced, whether it's on a website, DVD, or even video cassette, without proper authorization from the producer of the film or the studio. When I asked Professor Ross Rice about the case, he told me that as we're more dependent on streaming services such as Netflix or Hulu, we don't see people using DVDs anymore, which makes it harder for bootleg DVDs to be sold. But piracy still exists, and he proved an interesting fact how the FBI is able to track down illegal websites quicker.
But there's still ways that intellectual property can be stolen. The producers of it, the movie studios, for example, are very concerned about it. They don't want their intellectual property to be stolen and sold online. And I know that does happen from time to time. The problem with digital crimes, if you were to steal a copy of a movie that hasn't been released yet, and you were to make it available on your website, there's a digital trail that's going to lead back to you. So it's generally pretty easy to trace that back and to identify who's responsible for that and make an arrest and file charges.
I must say, that is a relief for the studios, knowing that it's much harder for bootleg movies to be sold. Though they're still not done knowing how piracy is coming into the streaming age, it's a new challenge to take on.
Some drugs are actually legal these days, and some never will be. But who goes after the big dogs when the bone is a cache of smack? Here's George Brew.
Black market marijuana dealers might think they are not the target for police investigations, but that is not the case. The FBI was recently able to set up a sting to arrest 2 men for the possession of marijuana, heroin, and crack. The FBI was able to track down Antoine Lambert and Jesse Levy's drug operation with the help of their heavy marijuana distribution. Federal agents raided several locations and seized 4.5 kilograms of marijuana, 100 grams of crack, 90 grams of heroin, 10 handguns, and $30,000 in cash. It was the distribution of marijuana that led the authorities to them and the heavier drugs. Former FBI agent Ross Rice explained why marijuana is still being monitored heavily.
In Illinois, the marijuana law has very low limits where it's now legal for recreational purposes. If you're talking 4.5 kilos, that's way over and above what is a legal limit. And now that it's legalized and that it's being taxed by the state, there's even more emphasis, I think, being put on detection and arrest of people that are involved in the illicit sale of the drug, because in effect you're taking money away from the state.
With black market marijuana dealers taking away money from the state, you can be assured that law enforcement will be out on the look for them, probably more than ever.
The FBI handles cases all over the country, but what if the criminal leaves the country? Who's in charge? Here's Shantiera Wilson.
For decades, the FBI has helped authorities catch criminals and solve cases. But what happens when a suspect goes on the run? Former FBI agent Ross Rice goes inside the FBI to give us the answers. Arnando Jimenez, a suspect in the brutal 2012 murder of his new bride, Estrella Carrera, has made the latest addition to the FBI's most wanted fugitives list. However, Ross Rice, former FBI agent, explains why there are still challenges finding suspects even after they have made the list. She was found in the bathtub still wearing the dress from their reception.
After committing the crime, which was murder, he fled the country. Now, because it was a murder is not a violation of federal law that the FBI has jurisdiction over. It's a state crime. I believe it was the Burbank or the Bridgeview Police Department were investigating that case. They identified him as a suspect. He was charged formally with the murder. They determined that he had fled the country. Burbank Police Department doesn't have authority to go to Mexico, so they came to the FBI and said, we would like your help in locating and bringing this person back to stand justice.
The search for Arnando Jimenez continues with now a $100,000 reward. Find out how you can help catch a killer at FBI.gov. I'm Shantiera Wilson reporting inside the FBI.
When we come back, the criminal mind can be brilliant, but it can also be sloppy, arrogant, and dangerous. The unbelievable mistakes criminals can make when we come back. Looking inside the criminal mind, it's not a pretty place. Some can be brilliant, but others can't get out of their own way. Here's Sam Stevenson.
The FBI is known for dealing with major crimes and criminal cases. I wanted something different from normal. I wanted to see if there were any strange cases that threw the FBI off their game. Was there anything so random and bizarre that even the best investigators were shocked? When I spoke to Ross Rice, he simply stated that every case was unique. Even when I asked him about a case of a stolen lemur, Rice simply stated that Congress had passed a law called the Endangered Species Act, and that this criminal had broken this law, amongst other ones. These cases were rare, Rice added, but that it was something that the FBI had seen before. Rice then proceeded to tell a story of a bank robbery he had investigated and how the case was easily solved because the criminal of the crime had gone on the radio and spoke about the robbery.
Probably the strangest one I had was a bank robbery. There was a segment on a radio show a few years ago, and we're actually going back a little bit farther for a few years, but it was a call-in talk show in the morning, and the topic of the day was, what's something that you did that got away with? And somebody called up, knowing that they were live on the air, and they talked about a bank robbery that they committed 6 months earlier in Homewood with 3 other people, and they were laughing that they got away with it. Well, one of our agents was listening to that on the way in the morning, and we went back to the station. We were able to identify who the caller was through phone records. Case solved. So that was pretty weird.
The moral of the story? Don't rob a bank, but if you're going to, leave your thoughts off the air.
And that concludes this episode of Inside the FBI. Our thanks to Ross Rice and crime fighters everywhere. We'll see you next time.